and Mary's family. I'm going to do something similar to what Carla did and read a little bit. So in 1995, I met Mary. She was 83 and I was 38, a 45-year age difference. Jean Scanlon and Mary MacEwan were my first friends in Tucson. How cool is that? Mary invited me to live with her briefly when I first moved to town, and we talked about all of the things that girls talk about. Politics, the economy, the pitiful state of the world. Pitiful, that was her word. And Bart and Lisa Simpson. because Mary adored the absurdity of that animated television show. Inevitably, these conversations took place around the dining table. That fabulous, I thought it was orange, but I hear now it's China red, but that fabulous China red table that Alan made with his own two hands. For me, that table was sort of the embodiment of Alan. I never knew him. He had died years before I met Mary, and so that table sort of represented him to me, and the other things that he created in the house as well. After spending time in her home, I know that Mary invited folks to join her around that table for a variety of activities, including meetings, mailings, and meals. I think you could call Mary a foodie. She was a foodie before the word was invented. Certainly she was an omnivore, and she entirely enjoyed the experience of eating. It was a delight to share a meal with her because of her gratitude and appreciation for the food. And her taste could be adventuresome. Andy and I one time went with her to South Tucson to an eatery called Pico de Gallo. It's a tiny place where you order at the counter, you choose a seat, wait for your number to be called, and then go back to the counter and get your food. It's actually a lot like places, roadside seafood shops in New England. In fact, Pico de Gallo served a lot of fish, greenhorn tamales, and horchata. Mary had the tongue taco. I didn't know it was on the menu until she ordered it. She was a legendary baker of cookies. Undoubtedly, you have a favorite. I was partial to the cranberry pistachio biscotti. It was so tasty. Mary gave me the recipe and I made them a couple of times. And they were very labor intensive to make, mostly because you had to essentially bake them twice. Knowing that Mary did not shy away from a complicated baking project, I enlisted her to test cookie recipes for me when I worked on a community cookbook. She made the most complicated recipe, which required mixing a stiff dough, dividing the dough in two, rolling the dough into logs, chilling the dough, and then cutting it into little discs that you could put on a baking sheet and cook in the oven. They were delicious, of course. We sat around the red china table, eating cookies and talking about them so that we could describe their attributes for the cookbook. And you know something, she loved to party. So I hope that we have a good time at the party to come. Yeah. Cheers.
Just a few remembrances of a very special person, not only in my life, but really special to us all. She's one of those people in life that is unforgettable, and that was Mary. I had many connections with her. I suspect that I met her very shortly after she arrived in Tucson, and I'm not sure of the date, but I think it was somewhere around 1958 or 59. In 1961 was when the loyalty oath case began, and she and Alan were very strong supporters of it from the very beginning. They weren't here much through the years of the oath fight because Ed Morgan had represented Alan at the University of Arizona, who I think was fired mostly for taking a Christmas trip to Cuba. Strangely enough, he became, what shall we say, an ineffective teacher after a trip to Cuba in 1960. I always wondered about that. And Mary and Alan left Tucson for a few years, but during those years, we kept in touch. And I guess my biggest remembrance of them during those years is that in 1966, Vern and my then husband, Daisy Goodman, Ed Morgan's secretary, Ed Morgan and myself made a trip to the U.S. Supreme Court for the hearing on the Elfbrandt case. And who was there? Mary and Alan, who came before us and waited for us there, and was there during the hearing on the day that it was argued on February 24th, 1966. By the way, that was rodeo day. That was how I got to go because I was still teaching, and it was rodeo vacation. Thanks for rodeo days. At any rate, I was always surprised and pleased that when Alan retired, that they came back to Tucson, and I always wondered why. They had lived and worked in many places, and I always wondered just what it was that anchored them in Tucson. And I'm still not sure I know the answer, but I can't say how pleased I was that even I was away for a few years to come back and know that Mary was here. The other connection over many, many years, and I think that it's Thursday Lunch Bunch is about 24 years. We have this sort of informal get-together on Thursdays about noon at Furs, and there's no commitment, just show up if you want to see your friends, some of them. And Mary was so faithful to that. Year after year, I could count on seeing Mary on Thursdays. It was amazing. The group had just started to meet before I got back from New York. I spent a few years in New York, and they were beginning to meet. And some of the things I remember from Mary at Thursday Lunch Bunch was, yes, that questioning all the time. And what really amused me and made me think a lot, you know, Mary had a lot of, what shall we say, doubts about religion, to say the least. And I can remember that in our conversations, if religion became a part of the conversation, she would just start almost like a lawyer, you know, questioning you on the stand. She would start challenging you and asking you questions about religious convictions. I just loved it. It was really great. And she nailed me a few times about being a Quaker. She really did. She was wonderful. One of the other incidents I remember very clearly one day, you know, as we've all gotten older, we start talking about our health or the lack of it and all our problems. And Mary one day sat there, I think as long as she could, and scolded us, saying that she came to talk about the important things and about politics, and she didn't want to hear anything more about our health. She was wonderful, and she really kept us on track. And it was a big disappointment when she very carefully told us that she didn't think she'd be coming anymore, that she was just too tired. And that was about 1.5 years ago. And Mary is one of the most special people in my whole life. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.